It's the worst fucking podcast that you'll hear. It's not that respected when it's the collective as Christian would cheer. It's the worst fucking podcast that you'll hear.
Collective Podcast. All right, Jerry, we're here. We had a surprise. We recorded a podcast before, and then Mr. Married Man over here pops up and goes, "Hello," and here he is. He's like, "Let's do a podcast."
Wait, you're saying I'm married?
Yeah, we're here with
He could only be so lucky.
we're here with I don't know. He was only here for one episode, right? Tales from the Filmmakers. He was here like way back early days.
No, he was there for the first episode.
Yes, we did our first episode and Tales from the Filmmakers. We're here with Ian Ustick.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. So what's been going on, Ian? What's been going on? I don't know what this episode is going to be about. We may release, we may not release it. I don't know. We're just going to have a casual conversation.
No, it's
see
going
where
to
it
be
goes.
like the question marks, the prince's name when he changed it to that. It's just like, yep, that's my name, the question marks.
We're all wearing a Riddler shirt
So-
with a question mark.
So what are frogs?
What are frogs?
So what's going on, Ian? What's
Not
going on?
much. Went to Maine. People are slow. Went to Arizona. They own guns, and it's.
So that's why the recount was all messed up because
Yeah,
you went there. You
'cause
went
I
to
showed up
Arizona.
there.
You went to
Arizona's an absolutely beautiful state.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's landscapes right out of John Ford films. It's beautiful.
Also,
How many mountains did you not want to climb, but you end up climbing?
Well, I only climbed one mountain, and that was in Maine.
Ooh.
how out of breath were you?
Yeah, we were. And the problem is, once you went all the way up there, you had to go right back down. It took about a good hour to get up. It took half an hour to get back
That's
down.
why people like with hiking, they only do hiking maybe a few times a year, if not every other year, because they don't realize that like when you're climbing up, you do have the other half that you have to do, just getting back to where you started.
Well, the best part is when you're going up, it's usually longer. When you're going down, you're going with gravity, so
Right.
it takes shorter. But people were bringing dogs up there. Like a German Shepherd was climbing borderline vertically up Acadia National Park's biggest mountain. I was like, how does he get?
Well,
he got up there.
Well, I mean, they're dogs.
They're dogs. Yeah. So
But what are
they're just-
dogs?
What are dogs?
What are frogs?
What are frogs?
But I'm telling you, the national parks, as much as I disagree with the federal government, it's the one area they do a very good job with. They have things with the roads. They have places you can do trails. Everyone's social distance, so I didn't get COVID.
You went up to Maine, and was there anybody up there, or was it just like, hello, what's going on?
It's one of those states where you wouldn't know COVID happened.
Oh my god!
Because it's like basically there's not many people up there already.
So did you try the lobster up there? Or?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
the lobster
how,
rolls was
it?
amazing.
Yeah,
It was incredible. And then we took a stop down in Massachusetts. We went to Plymouth, where the Pilgrims landed. It's basically like a summer Jersey Shore kind of town. We saw an old
So
church.
there's pilgrims and DJs, and they're at the shore house. That's what you're saying Maine is like.
Basically, yeah, New Jersey. There's pilgrims and DJs. It's by the way, in Maine they talk like that.
They talk.
The Boston
the
accent.
bastard, like the
We
bastard.
went to Bar Harbor.
The Bar Harbor.
Bar Harbor.
Got,
They talk like that.
you got some Sam Adams.
Sam Adams.
Batman. Get Robin. Get to the car.
Get the car.
Get the car.
In the fucking car.
In the fucking car.
So yeah, Arizona was great. We went to Tombstone. We went to
Where they shot Tombstone.
where they shot Tombstone.
Yeah.
We went to Tucson, Phoenix. It was great. Now we're back in good old Jersey / New York.
Yeah, in Hoboken.
Off topic, what's the most touristy thing you feel like you've ever done
In my life,
in your life? Like it could even be in your own like state or whatever.
go to Gettysburg. I feel like a tourist. I'm in my
Let's
own
go to
country.
Gettysburg like three
times in a
three
year.
times a year.
So
I'll go
what-
back next year. I
So
love it.
what were you expecting differently from going like a third time compared to like a first time?
I know a lot about the battle, so I feel like when I went with my wife, at that point just girlfriend, you take the time out. You have multiple days, whereas the first time I went with a friend of mine, it was just one day trip. you can't do as much on a day.
Did you see there was a video floating around of people driving down one of the streets in Gettysburg? It was pitch black.
Oh, it was
near,
fake.
It was near. The person running.
If you look really close in the video, it's the raindrops. Because at first I was watching it and you could see, like, oh, it's Ghost running across the cannons, but then you rewind, it's like, wait a minute, he's filming the glass of his car, and the raindrops
are going sideways.
They're going because the wind, and if you look closely, oh, it's the raindrops moving.
Oh, yeah, no, because
at first I was like, what the hell? It looked legit, but it's fake. And the New York Post ran with it, but I think that was more clickbait. Because I've heard stories of they do ghost tours at Gettysburg. I will never do them.
I remember you telling me, like, you go on the field and you just feel
the energy.
Feel the energy of just...
What, 2,000 people died there? So
I think one on top of the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy there. Yeah, a lot of negative energy. It's a beautiful area. The problem also, when we went out, that we found that we talked to people, there's not much out there. It's rural Pennsylvania. There's drug problems.
Do you feel like people only gravitate towards, like, the landmarks of their history and what's, like, represented over there?
Yeah, because it's way out. It's, like, southwestern Pennsylvania on the border, I think, of Maryland. There's not much out there.
Right.
Like, you're driving for a
It's
good
just
2
all
hours.
field. It's just all field and farmland, or just like...
Mm-hmm. There's like barns and those windmills out there, and then all of a sudden it says entering Gettysburg, and then it becomes like 1864.
Oh, so it's like freaking Deliverance, and like just in the north.
Oh, there's some people
just in the north.
Yeah, literally. It was funny when I went there the first time. We were at a biker bar, and everyone had Confederate flags, and I was like, we're in Pennsylvania, but I was like, we're technically...
You're technically on like you're on like the border there of like south.
Because Maryland was they were Union state, but they were border state. Yeah, so like, it's like So the Civil War. That's a whole other separate podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
speaking of Civil Wars.
Oh God! Speaking of Civil Wars. I made the joke like, so Ian, what are you doing for your birthday? Oh, I'm going to Gettysburg. Of course, people go out drinking. People go to strip bars. I want to do some type of history thing. Let's go to Gettysburg.
I want to go to Gettysburg.
Where you going for your best with your best men on the bachelor party weekend?
Vernon.
Mount Vernon.
We went to Mount Vernon. Mm-hmm. We went to Manassas Battlefield and
Manasses.
Joe kept making that joke.
It sounds fun. How was it?
It was, you were there. And then we went to the D.C. Zoo, and we went to Georgetown.
Oh, the D.C. Zoo.
God, Jerry showed up as a banana.
He was walking around with the bottom of his what was it?
There is a bear costume that pretty much emulates that I'm riding on top of the bear. So why not make the animals go out of the cage, so that makes me on top of the bear, just walking around the general public. Mm-hmm. So I'm just literally, like, taking a piss in the bathroom, just walking out that way. I'm going to the food lines, like, in the same criteria and everything. And then the looks of just dismissiveness, disgust, and then also laughter. And most importantly, laughter is just prevalent throughout the entire zoo.
Yes, I remember we were waiting for him because they parked on the side of the zoo and they're walking, and all of a sudden through the crowds I see people moving, and I see somebody walking
through the veil.
With the veil.
The heavens opened, and there was Jerry.
The bottom of yours was a lion?
So then there's like two legs like that represent like sneakers.
Oh.
So what I did was, when I was pointing to the entrance, I would have the sneakers on top of the window to like talking to the patients or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm just kicking my feet back. I'm having a good time.
Oh my goodness.
So we told the story on the second episode that we did a couple weeks ago, the COVID episode, about how you guys were driving out of DC.
And we look at
Sean's phone, and it's like, oh shit, COVID went to DC as you guys were leaving.
The first cases got reported as we were driving out. It's like, well, that was us.
Well, that was fun. That was fun.
And that was before we realized how bad it was.
That was March. That was
March.
First week of March.
And then I got back to work, and within 2 weeks, I'm like, I was in work for 2 days, like, terrified.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the whole thing was don't touch your face.
Well, because you had somebody there. You basically the guy.
I can't say who I work for, but they said the guy was in my building.
Well, basically the guy that was in your building
was basically New York.
Patient zero for New York. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm reading on the news that Cuomo cordoned off, quarantined New Rochelle because the guy was there. They brought army tents.
Yeah, you were like,
are we going down to quarantine?
Too late now. People start popping up.
And thankfully we called, and Governor Cuomo made the good decision, and he told us work from home. I was like, good, because this is going to get scary.
And you're still working from home.
And I'm still working from home in the foreseeable future. Do you guys think there's going to be a vaccine before the election?
Well, the election just happened.
I mean, before Biden gets into the office?
Yeah, they said. Pfizer said that their vaccine worked, 90% good?
So it's 90% efficacy between a plasma trial, which was half of them, and then the other half was actually injected with the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Some guy volunteered, right? It was some guy
and they said it was 90% was
okay. So 10% you might get an extra head, but
yeah.
Well, so the distribution issues pertaining to that.
The military might have to do it, right? They said
the military, but then there's also the issues of storage for like the vaccines because they have to be, I believe, negative 60 degrees Celsius or
and
something
it's rounds
like that.
of shots, isn't it? Like rounds of
so
shots.
it's 2 rounds.
3-week intervals.
Okay.
It's 2 rounds of shots, but they said that it only lasts for a year. So I'm like, so it's basically going to be like the flu shot, where
so
it's
basically be a new flu shot.
Yeah, which is like.
So it's almost like you can wait for this. I really don't feel comfortable. I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all, but just. When I heard him say Operation Warp Speed, I don't want a Warp Speed vaccine.
I need to see more competition. I need to see what Moderna does with their numbers within the next week or so.
Well,
I need to see what AstraZeneca does when they put themselves back on the trial.
That's the other company?
Yeah. There's like at least 6 that are in...
Don't you have to do like 2 years worth of FDA,
FDA? Yeah, follow the FDA.
So why, I guess, did they somehow?
We can't keep the country shut down.
No, I know that, but did they speed up their process, or are they just kind of like ignoring all the 2-year trials?
I think they're going past all the red tape.
They just cut off all the red tape.
Yeah, cut off all the red tape.
Okay.
It's interesting because I was researching the Spanish flu as far as when.
How'd they get rid of that? I forget.
It was widespread.
Burned out.
So eventually, herd immunity over time. Then in 1945, if you look it up, apparently the widespread of the vaccine was available at that time right after World War II.
Okay.
Because of the lack of technology beforehand.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading a story in the beginning of the pandemic how they were talking about 1918 flu. One of I think patient 0 was a soldier from Kansas. He went over to France, got it, and then came back, and then somehow months later there was a victory parade for the Americans in Philadelphia. Everyone came out, and like half the city got the virus. It was so bad. And back then, news travel. Well, they had what did they have? Did they have phones in World War One? Yeah. No. Wait. Wow, I sound like an idiot on this podcast.
They had AT&T back then.
Oh god, yeah.
No, they probably had the phone.
What's it called?
The
Morse
rotary?
code, the telegraph, Morse code.
When 1918.
They had to have
phones. Did they pick up the thing and go, "Hey, operator, I want to talk to so and so"?
Yeah, Alexander Graham Bell invented the phone in the 1890s. So yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're Italian, that's disputed. If you're Italian.
Oh, if he's the guy.
Yeah, it's an Italian guy made it. But
that's the debate about who invented who harnessed electricity. Was it Edison or Westinghouse? There's actually a movie that just came out.
Not Tesla.
Well, that's the other story. Yeah. That Tesla tapped into, allegedly. I have no evidence of this. I'm just throwing it out there. What I've heard, but I'm hearing, as Trump says, I'm hearing things. I heard that Tesla had found a way to harness free energy from just the air.
And we can't have that.
And we can't have that because there's no profit. Yeah. So Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse basically wanted him out of the business of electricity because one, I believe, was direct current.
They want Elon Musk out of electricity?
Yeah. So I think George Westinghouse was direct current, which is a battery, and then...
the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah, whereas Thomas Edison was AC/DC, which is a self-propelling electricity. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah. And there's actually a movie that came out, it's on Amazon, called The Current War, and it's with Tom Holland as let's get this right, Benedict Cumberbatch as George Westinghouse. The bad guy who played Zod plays Thomas Edison. Very fitting.
Which is the
new one.
Zod? Michael Sheen.
Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon. And then Tesla's played by Tom Holland.
I could see that.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I got to watch it, but I've heard it's called The Current War.
Yeah.
So interesting. That's something I've been reading about a lot recently, just about that period between the Civil War and World War I. All those rich people. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan, Vanderbilt, like the industries they built. Like we don't have that much today. Well, we do have Elon Musk.
Well, it was
they just, as of today, after this recording, they just launched, SpaceX just launched
partnering with NASA, right?
Yeah.
I think space really is the final frontier.
Think of it this way. It was the first kind of really contemporary documentation of the top elite of the class.
Mm-hmm. Because those guys were able to just make money unheard of.
Yeah.
The total freedom we had, they were like, John D. Rockefeller was like, I'm going to dig holes all over the country and just monopolize it, and I'll be the one giving oil to everybody.
It was just one of those things where innovation was convoluted with Monopoly, and then people over time, based on the reflective sense of history, didn't know how to read it.
Did you know I read about, I think it was in West Virginia, some company, I think it was Standard Oil, where the people in the town were working only for them, and like they wanted they wanted like a union basically, and I think like they appealed to the president to call in the National Guard to shoot rioters.
When was this?
I'm gonna butcher this. I want to say 1905, maybe.
So that would be Roosevelt.
That might be William Taft.
No, Taft was 1900.
Wasn't he in the early 1910s?
Tens, yeah, because Woodrow Wilson was 1913.
Yeah.
So 1912. But so yeah, it would be 1906. Actually, check that out. It's called West Virginia Massacre. We're all over the place in this podcast.
Pull that shit up, Jamie.
Yeah, pull that shit up, Jamie.
What's the president's name?
William Taft. I gotta look up West Virginia Massacre.
So he was.
Was he one-term president?
He was 1909.
Okay,
until 1913.
One-term president.
Yeah, till 1913. Yeah, one-term president.
Because then it was a three-way race in
Woodrow Wilson. Oh yeah, and
it was 1920. Oh no, it was 1920.
That?
When it was? Oh no, I think it might have been Harding, not Coolidge. It was called the Battle of Matawan. It was not Matawan in Jersey. It was a shootout.
What year?
1920, between local coal miners and the.
That was Woodrow Wilson.
No, he was.
1920. Woodrow Wilson was 19.
Oh, so Harding was only. How long was Harding in? Coolidge was a one-term president.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we're talking about this, now I'm curious. What do you think your jobs would have been 100 years ago? What do you think you would have done for a living?
So if so that's 1922.
1920.
Oh, okay. I would probably.
What are we time travelers?
Okay, so if we were born in 1889, we probably all would have served in the First World War.
Yeah.
That means at least one of us is dead.
Probably Jerry.
If I came back,
World War II.
I'm trying to think. The 1920s was the Roaring 20s. I don't know. I think they had libraries back then.
Probably so. My grandfather on my mom's side was a presser for like clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably would have been. I probably would have been like a presser.
Okay.
Yeah.
My great grandfather was a drunk, and worked in a factory, and the other great grandfather came from Italy, and I don't know what he did. I think a lot of people back then were laborers.
Yeah.
You also have to assume if you're an immigrant back then, you're definitely going to be doing more manual labor.
And if we were to actually be Americans at that time too.
Oh,
based on family history and shit like that.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's actually very funny. Back then, the Italian and Irish immigrants were still fairly new. They were sequestered in their own areas.
Right.
You weren't even considered an American by a lot of people because the white Protestants saw this country as theirs.
They would have just reduced us to doing a podcast like this and have no privilege. It's fucked up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you imagine bringing something like this back there? They'd be like,
witchcraft!
Burn them!
Well, imagine when they first had lights. They thought, I think there was propaganda said that when, I think it was Westinghouse or Edison, when they first put the electric thing in and he turns it on, it's going to blow up Chicago. And he's like, no, it's not. Click. And they're like, ah! And then, didn't blow up.
I was just looking... you talk about your favorite president, Calvin Coolidge.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace.
Telling you the man
he became president not by being elected. Harding died of a heart attack.
Kind of like Lyndon Johnson with John Kennedy. He finished out the term. Then he ran for us.
It's funny. I didn't realize Gerald Ford's the only president that was never elected.
Never elected.
So he wasn't elected as with Nixon as
was the first
vice president. He was just appointed
after Spiro Agnew resigned.
Yeah, and then
he lost the election to Jimmy Carter. So he was only president for a year and a half.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter's 96 years old.
And he just got over cancer.
He's the oldest. He's the oldest,
president.
By the time the next election comes, 2024, he's going to be 100 years old.
I think he might live that long.
Yeah, he's definitely
going to live that long.
I think
he's going to do it.
I think he can do it.
Yeah, I think
you know what's funny? As much as everyone doesn't like him for the economy back then, he's the only president that got a Middle East peace deal that still is works today.
Yeah.
Egypt and Israel don't attack.
He was too nice. He's too nice. And he didn't really know what to do with the economy.
And they knew because
what did he do? What did he even try to do anything? What did he try to do?
The problem with him was he was a Democrat in his own Congress. His own party wouldn't play ball with them. He was actually much more conservative. He actually got rid of I think one federal agency. You never heard that from a Democrat.
Oh yeah, that's.
And his whole thing was balance the budget and lower the military budget. That was unheard of for a Democrat.
Did he wind up balancing the budget?
I think he balanced the budget.
Oh, nice.
I believe so.
Interesting.
Shocking.
How,
Shocking.
The biggest.
Then Reagan came in and ramped it up.
The biggest pivotal point for Republicans debate is that he brought in the Department of Education.
It's very interesting. People forget, Republicans forget that Richard Nixon created the EPA.
Yeah.
Everyone forgets that. Richard Nixon was no small government fiscal
He
conservative.
also took us off the gold standard.
Yeah,
which is,
Richard Nixon, for all of his many sins, that might have been the worst one.
Yeah.
Do you know why he did that? Basically, the agreement after World War II was that we would all of the Western countries would back their money by gold. Yeah. And eventually they realized the United States spending so much damn money, they asked for their gold back, and he goes, "Oh, we're just not going to use the gold standard anymore. So you should keep printing money."
And then you're going to put it in Fort Knox. You think?
No, you think.
Yeah,
and now that allows, with no gold standard, the government could spend as much money as it wants, and the Fed can move interest rates whenever. It's become so political that that's an issue that I don't know how we're ever going to solve that.
So try to explain that, of just give us a Federal Reserve for dummies.
Okay. The way this country was set up was that Congress would print money via taxes from the Treasury, and that would be mainly pieces of paper, dollars backed by gold and silver.
Yeah.
That way, gold and silver is a hedge against inflation. I don't think the inflation rate of gold has really fluctuated that much in the last 200 years. Gold tends to be relatively stable.
Yeah.
The problem is the big administrators and the big bureaucrats don't like a gold standard because they can't manipulate things. When you can move the interest rate to zero, government can spend more. Well, if you have a gold standard, the government can only spend what it has in the bank. I'll tell you the one story. During the Civil War was the first tax we had because we had a gold standard still, but Lincoln needed money to fight the Civil War. So he just had them print money, the greenbacks. And what happened?
Yeah, I was going to say, Pawn stars.
Yeah.
Always would bring in greenbacks and
they were printed by
and
Lincoln.
the gold colored certificates that were basically
gold certificates.
Gold certificates. Yeah.
All the paper was
it's an IOU.
It was an IOU saying that if you go to the bank, you can get this for gold. When you detach it from gold, it's a piece of paper. What makes this piece of paper with a 10 on it any different than this paper with a 1 on it?
But then so
Abraham Lincoln.
So with the Federal Reserve now, with no gold standard, they just keep pumping money, which is causing inflation with no interest rate.
Because you dilute it basically. Yeah. The more something is out there and the less rare it is, the more value it loses. Give an example. In the Roman Empire, this is going back 2,000 years. With coins would have a certain amount of, I believe it was silver in them.
Yeah. But
there was only so much silver, so they would dilute it. That way, 10 gold coins would have a little bit of silver in it to reach what should be one thing of silver. And at a certain point, they made so much of them that there was no silver in it. It was worthless. That's what the U.S. dollar is basically doing.
I think it's silver is 0.99999 you can never have. You can never have a full 1%.
Pure silver.
Pure silver.
Where gold you can, right?
I'm not sure. Gold's been I want to invest in gold.
Gold is the one. I think people don't understand. Yeah. People don't really realize it's not so much all the pirate movies. What are they looking for?
They're looking for gold.
And if you see it in movies, what do you think? Yeah.
No, they're looking for credit. They're looking for a good payment on their mortgage. Everything.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And what also is, I think the gold standard
for the boats, the mortgage on their boats.
The gold standard by nature limits what DC can do. And if you're a big government bureaucrat, you don't want a gold standard. That's the main thing. So all the people from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times who will say it's outdated, it's
you're
old.
Calling them out here.
I'm calling them right out because they think, well, we've moved past that. It's we moved past that. We're inflating these bubbles every 10 years. Because all they're doing is inflating bigger and bigger bubbles.
They've been doing this since 1980.
Minimum 1980, yeah.
So I don't want to get into I don't know if you it's not going to be a crazy theory because it's an interesting if you want to connect the dots. So Woodrow Wilson was the one that signed the Federal Reserve Act,
in 1913.
Right? 1913.
But the act itself was written at a secret meeting in 1910.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
So if you want to connect some certain dots here, there was a certain incident that happened
in between
on the sea.
Yeah.
It's a famous boat.
Yeah.
There's a $2 billion movie that came out in 1997 about it by James Cameron.
And the character who died is in the movie.
Yeah.
John Jacob Astor, who's Astor plays
who was against the Federal Reserve banking, and he just so happened to die in the Titanic. I don't know. I'm just
do you know who owned the White Star Line? J.P. Morgan.
There you go.
Who was the biggest defender of the Federal Reserve Act? J.P. Morgan.
Don't want to.
What I do with that is I just leave that there.
Yeah, just leave it there.
Leave that there,
leave
and
it there.
I don't know what that means.
Just leave it for Joe Rogan.
And then 50 years later, Nixon took us off the gold standard. So just connecting dots. Just leaving you breadcrumbs.
Yeah. Now, whether that's true or not,
you can look it up yourself. We're not claiming that we.
And the facts remain that even on a gold standard, if you want to print a ton of money, you can do it, but it's easier to see the inflationary effects instantly. Yeah. Because everyone's seeing like, hey, how come this money's still worth something, but this is worth garbage because the government doesn't have the money.
I don't think a lot of people understand, especially like our parents' age. It's
like
live. Back when mine was like something was 20 cents. Now
back
it's like
they were millennials.
Now it's $1.50. It's like
it's inflation.
Inflation. Yeah,
and they don't understand. Get that. And what the media does and academics do a bad job is they label inflation as a symptom. It's actually the cause. Yeah. The printing money by nature is inflation. Yeah. But they say prices going up is inflation. No, that's the effect of it.
By the inflation.
Yeah. By you printing money, it's causing prices to go up.
You're causing inflation, which is causing the prices to go up.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
we worded that right, yeah.
Yeah, so I was making sure.
So the inflation is, by nature, printing money. It's basically, so it's funny, we say that China is manipulating our currency. That's all we do.
Well, here's another funny thing. If you want it, I basically tell people when people ask me when I bring up Federal Reserve stuff, and I don't want to go too into the weeds. Yeah. All I say to them is, you have the game Monopoly, just open up the instruction manual. When it talks about the bank, it says the bank doesn't run out of money. If the bank does run out of money,
they can just print
you go to your closet, you pull out a piece of paper, and you just write down monetary issues, and that is used for money. And the bank never runs out of money.
Do you know what's actually so scary about this? There's a new thing that academics are now literally pulling out of their butt called modern monetary theory.
Oh, what is it, like Bitcoin?
It basically just says debt doesn't matter. We never have to balance budgets. We could just keep printing money.
You know what's funny?
Because they don't want to deal with the debt.
There was a girl I was dating over the summer who worked for Bloomberg.
Okay.
And nonetheless...
Not name dropping here.
Not name dropping.
No name dropping. No name dropping.
So this person was saying the exact same argument as he was, and she goes, this whole thing about printing money, I don't even understand the concept of that. People do it all the time.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
That's scary. It's like, just print it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you guys a good example. Right after World War I, when Germany went into a civil war and then became the Weimar Republic, do you know what they did to meet the demand of all the paying back to all the what are they called? What did they do to Germany? They punished them, but they punished them by making them pay back war debts. To meet that, they just printed money, and to buy a loaf of bread, you had to bring a wheelbarrow full of money.
Yeah, that was also inflation. An episode of Pawn Stars. They brought in like German, the joint base. And he looked at him and goes, I can't pay you anything for it. They're worthless. And he's like, well, what about the historical value? He goes, even with
value.
He goes, even with the historical significance of it, it's $2. He said, I'll give you $2. Yep, and the guy wasn't insulted by it, but he was just very taken aback. Like he didn't understand it. Yeah.
Because even historic value doesn't mean anything. It has to have intrinsic value. And if you printed it into oblivion, it doesn't matter.
Well, they brought in I want to say a $5 greenback from Lincoln.
Yeah, from 1865.
From 1865, and that was worth $500 to $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was backed by gold, right?
Yeah, because it was backed by gold back then. And you watch that show. That's all they talk about is gold. They love gold.
And they say the Federal Reserve's all
nonsense. They're all in on.
Sound like Ron Paul.
Oh yeah.
There was a great moment. I think what really woke me up to a lot of things that the media won't cover is I think it's 2011. Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Fed at the time, was in a debate with Ron Paul. Ron Paul was the House Economic Committee. I think that was what it's called, House Monetary Committee, whatever it was. And he asked him a simple question. He goes, "Mr. Bernanke, is gold money?" And he goes, "No." At that moment, there should have been riots from coast to coast, because what that basically means is no matter how bad it ever gets, the U.S. government has no hedge against inflation.
Right.
The only thing they're going to do is print more money.
They deconstructed their morale right there.
At that moment, there should have been like a major awakening across, and you saw Ron Paul's face just like, so we're just going to print money.
Mic drop.
And then he said, it's been money for 6,000 years, but somebody just made it not. And he goes, and Bernanke goes, "Oh, well, it's an asset." He goes, "Well, some people think it's money."
Well, it's like Bitcoin. It's like.
Well, that isn't really so. Bitcoin has a method in terms of transit transfer because it's digital.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin in and of itself has no intrinsic value, so it's not really.
But the
money.
stock of it, I remember. Do you remember a couple years ago where people were like selling their stock because it was like 100.
But how volatile is it? Like
it was
Bill
very
Gates jumps into it and then he backs out and it drops down radically. You can't have something that.
What happened was Giuseppe, our friend, he was like my friend. He took out the stocks for Bitcoin that he had, or he found the Bitcoin in a hard drive that he had, put it in. It was $100,000 worth of it. He pulled that out and put it in some type of monetary cash fund. Like it was.
Did he have to pay like some kind of tax?
No, it was just pull it out, put it in the bank, bike drop, walk away.
What's that called when you gamble in the stock market and you make money? There's a tax.
It's day trading.
But was there a tax that they?
I have no clue.
I'm telling you another thing. We're going to go on. The tax code is so convoluted in this country. Yeah. I think they should get rid of the income tax and go to a national sales tax. People have gotten angry at me for suggesting that because they don't like the idea of like, oh, but so then I get that's worse than an income tax. I go no because it shuts up both sides. Yeah. Democrats shut up because the millionaires who live like millionaires have to pay more, and shuts the Republicans up because there's no income tax.
Right.
So. Basically, you'd have Bill Gates paying a lot more taxes, Jeff Bezos paying a lot more taxes, and me and you paying whatever because we don't live like millionaires. We pay whatever. Now the debate is how would you regulate that? What goods would be part of the income? It's a debate. It's a fair debate.
I think, and that debate also relies on the sense of entrepreneurship and innovation because
it could also stifle. And that's what I've heard. The argument is that if you put a national sales tax, it would stifle innovation because then you're kind of afraid to make money because you know you're going to get taxed a lot. So it's almost like
it's damned if you do whatever I'm saying is.
So I'm not really sure whether I just think the income tax, the quote unquote progressive income tax is not progressive, and it's tax code is didn't it get simplified under Trump?
Yeah,
like it was like 7 categories.
He was trying to simplify it to like one piece of paper, front and back.
Which I don't know why it can't be that.
I think it did. I think it did happen with whatever the last.
Apparently,
didn't it hurt people? Apparently, I heard it hurt.
If you cut about half of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Of the tax code?
Back in 2017.
Okay, that was the one thing the Republicans got passed.
Yeah.
Because there's been no bill. That was it.
That was it. That's the only thing. And then they lost.
Everyone forgets, like, all you got is 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, Obama only had 2 years. Bush only had 2 years. Like, before the parties switch in the House.
Which usually happens.
Which is actually good. It's a check on the system. That way one party can just run roughshod over...
Yeah, it's a little.
You don't want one party being in control of everything.
Well, they did that. What is it? Obama had it for
a year and a half. Till 2010.
No, didn't he have it? Because
what is it?
House and the Senate had in 2009. 2008. They swept.
They swept it. Yeah.
But then in 2010, the Tea Party showed up.
Yeah, and then
it's the House went Republican, but the Senate.
I remember 2014. The Republicans just swept
everything. Yeah,
and I just laughed.
And then they didn't do anything what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. Well, they gridlocked them.
That's honestly that's what it always happens.
It's going to be gridlocked now.
But it's going to be weird. We're now in a one-term president. Usually, I figured it's going to be the swap with a two-term president, but now we're in a one-term, so it's like things will get weird now.
Well, we might have a 2-1 term.
Yeah, because Trump and Biden.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that there's only been 2 one-term presidents in the last 50 years.
So
3. Bush.
Both Bush.
Carter.
And
Trump.
And now it's going to be Trump.
Would you call Ford a one-term president, or not even just finished out Nixon?
Ford was like, what, a year?
A year and a half. Although he presided over a couple of things. He presided over more covert stuff and withdrawal from Vietnam and pardoning Nixon. That's about it. And he didn't give.
That was the worst thing he did.
Yeah, once you pardon him, but I guess I understand the logic of like you don't want people to hold grudges.
We will not have the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe.
And then Jimmy Carter looks at him like, they've been there since 1942.
Russia is
Eastern Europe.
Russia is Eastern Europe. It's Central Europe. It's Western Europe.
The Soviet Union controls it all.
It's everywhere.
And that's what gave Jimmy Carter the election.
Yeah, and then
Ronald Reagan.
Besides the peace deal, what did Jimmy Carter even do anything?
Well, something very interesting. I'm sure I'll get. Well, it's all open. There's a great book. Zbigniew Brzezinski. He's Harvard faculty guy. He's passed away now. He was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, and he wrote a book basically bragging about before Reagan came in on the Afghan border. They did a couple of things to get the Soviets to come in to give them their own Vietnam. So we're always taught that America responded after the Soviets invaded. We wanted them coming in. We
goaded them to come in.
That way we could arm them, Mujahideen, fight them, and hopefully that would bankrupt the Soviet Union. And they asked Zbigniew Brzezinski about it.
And it kind of did, right?
I mean, the Soviet Union naturally was going to collapse anyway.
Yeah.
Because you can't run a system centrally planning everything. You don't have any private industry. How is that going to run? You can only print so much money, as we're seeing.
As we're seeing now.
But at least here, you could see the argument is you could print money if you had like a very flourishing entrepreneurial spirit, which we do, and the taxes do kind of balance it out. That's why I don't think we'll ever truly go into hyperinflation.
Right.
But you still need to balance the budget.
And that's what I was exactly going to say, because they're just managing low expectations right now.
Exactly.
Well, like what about stagflation? Like they were talking about it.
I don't understand what that meant.
I don't get what stagflation is.
That was because I think wages weren't going up during Jimmy Carter's term. I think that's what stagflation. I think that was mainly because this doesn't get taught in the 1960s. The Great Society, the moon missions, the Vietnam War. That was all on the credit card.
Right.
We didn't pay for that. We didn't raise taxes. We just put that on the credit card and just paid for that. And then in the 70s, we had stagflation. That was the after effects of you printing all this money, and now inflation comes in because your money is not worth as much.
Well, there was also these, like, well, not so much rumors, but things that actually happened where people, like, they had to wait, like, almost the hours, like, for fucking gas and shit like that.
Yeah, my mom did that. Yeah,
that was because of that was mainly, I believe that was because that was punishment by the Saudis because we sided with the Israelis in the 73 war. And that was their way of sticking it to us.
Yeah, so...
Also, it was a power grab by OPEC.
According to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is always reliable, in economics, stagflation or recession inflation is a situation in which the inflation rate is high, the economic growth rate slows, and unemployment remains steadily high. It presents a dilemma for economic policy since actions intended to lower inflation may exacerbate unemployment.
And the funny thing is, the only way, without a gold standard, how do you lower inflation? You have to do inflation.
So basically, by trying to push down the inflation, you were causing unemployment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I think the way they got out of it was when Reagan came in, he put Paul Volcker in charge of the Fed, and he raised interest rates, which caused people to save money. And then I think Reagan cut taxes, and I could be totally wrong, but I think that was the boost.
Yeah.
We still had debt, but the debt wasn't as bad.
Didn't Reagan raise taxes?
Yes.
Well, we kind of had a little bit of an inflation in the early... recession in the early 80s.
Because it didn't really kick off till the mid-80s. Yeah. Because Reagan ramped up spending beyond... He was no fiscal conservative. Yeah. But I want to say I don't remember. Did he cut taxes?
People say... he
cut taxes first, then he raised taxes.
Yeah, something like that.
According to my family, they all said, like, Reagan was, like... They had, like, their income went up and everything, and everyone was saving money, and it was, like, roaring.
I think it was because more the confidence was back.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in the early 1980s, like 81, 82, 83, Reagan, it wasn't good with the economy still. It didn't really ramp up until
like 85.
85. Yeah. Like that was when it really kicked off.
And then we had a tiny recession in
87.
93?
In 87.
87.
Well, what was there one in the early 90s too? Under Bush?
That's the whole thing. It continued. See, you notice in these cycles every 10 years, this is because the Fed is doing these things, manipulating the interest rates. What I really think, this is the simplistic answer with the Fed, if you would just let interest rates be determined by the market, then you wouldn't need central planning. Because then you'll be like, you'll debate where should I put my money in the bank here, put it in here, because the interest rate is determined by the market, not by this. People get scared of that because you're basically leaving it up in the air. But it's like, would you rather have people in the Federal Reserve determining it, a bunch of PhDs who obviously don't know what they're doing, or would you rather have the market figure it out?
And then we had a surplus
in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, and then
which was destroyed by Bush.
And then we got another. Well, I don't remember. Apparently I found out Barack Obama did balance the budget, but at the same time,
really,
he ramped up. He did deficit spending, but he did balance the budget. Like it didn't.
How does that work?
Because the deficit didn't keep getting worse every year. Under Trump, it got worse.
Well, didn't we have record GDP this year?
Yeah. Was it when he came in? Didn't this year?
No, this year they said like it's like the highest that it's been.
But isn't the debt,
because they said
the debt is greater than GDP.
Well, yeah. They also said because this year started out like with COVID and stuff that now everything's starting to like open up again. That
our debt is higher than GDP for the first time in history. That can't be.
Didn't it say like our spending? Was it something has now doubled to the point that was like there's more debt now than there's money.
Well, there's more debt than we put out in
Wasn't
GDP.
the pandemic spending about $3 to $4 trillion by itself?
Yeah, in 1 year. And remember, we didn't raise. Here's the problem: We didn't raise taxes to pay for that, and the Fed kept interest rates at 0. So it's creating this illusion that everything's okay.
Right.
That's the problem, where this is all an illusion, because if the Fed raised interest rates, which they were doing in the beginning, and actually it was good, it was still going to have, you would have a balancing act. I still don't believe in the Fed controlling interest rates, but at least they're understanding, okay, the economy's kicking, raise interest rates. You don't want people just spending tons of, you want some savings in there.
Yeah. Right.
But weren't we at negative interest rates?
That was under Obama. It got bad. We were at -1. That basically means that they're printing money faster than anybody can get it.
Oh.
That means like Chase has the money guaranteed to them before it's even off the printing press.
Oh my God.
And what's scary about that is that the Federal Reserve by nature is corruption, because then the banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, they get the money first at low interest, and then they get it at good interest rate, we get it inflated. We get it till it comes later.
Well,
so
Obama in the red was about $1 trillion a year in deficit spending.
Every single year?
Every single year, because under Bush, I believe the deficit was about 11 trillion, and then Obama, by its average, did about 1 trillion a year. So that's why Trump was saying we're 19 trillion in debt.
I think that's why I'm realizing the commonality between Bush, Obama, and Trump. They all keep the taxes low for the upper class, because Barack Obama kept the Bush tax cuts because it allows them to spend, because they can get away with the illusion of, see, I'm keeping your taxes low and I'll spend over here. It makes this illusion of everything's okay. Meanwhile, in logic, it would actually be, as much as I hate this, raise taxes if you want to, because you balance out the spending.
And lower spending.
Or if you're gonna spend 20 million, that's years ago.
Yeah.
$20 trillion. Why don't you raise taxes? Because that's not popular.
I can't wait for 10, 15 years from now where we have a number that we never even heard of. So what's after a trillion? What's
right
after
now
a trillion?
We're about at 30, I think. We got to 30. I think, did we hit 30?
No, just in terms of, not even the debt. I mean just spending. So it's we're doing 20 trillion. It's so when we get to the next...
Well, the next strata?
The next strata of
spending.
What's after trillion? A zillion?
Well, back at
is zillion even a real...
No, I think quintillion is a number.
My God, you imagine we're 50, 60. We spend $1 quintillion. We're going to be what the...
Quintillion?
If we keep going at this rate.
What?
I think it's kind of funny to look back at, I think Reagan, the deficit was 540 billion. And that was considered radical. Now it's 30 trillion. And no one's talking about it.
Jeez.
It's just it's a really strange thing. But I think also during the Cold War, we at least had, everyone was on our side. It was, even though it was an illusion of prosperity, there still was some of it. Whereas now, it's just...
So let's play a game of what if right now. So we
should call this podcast History What Ifs.
History What Ifs. Yeah. So what do you think that the spending and the deficit would have been as bad as it is now? Let's just say 9/11 never happened and we never went into the Middle East to do anything. Do you think it would be
no,
we was it 30 trillion
right now? Yeah.
Yes,
almost.
we'd be at what 50 billion or something.
These people were always going to be big spenders, but they were not going to spend the way they did. Well, most of
they're spending like drunken sailors.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but isn't most of the debt because of all these welfare entitlement programs, or is it the wars? Because I feel like foreign aid is much lower than I thought. Foreign aid isn't, even though it's bad, it's not as much. I feel like a lot of it is guaranteeing Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, or those not even on the list because those are guaranteed. You're pretty much
summarizing a credit card pie chart that you would get on an app, and then summarizing the percentage breakdowns of what you spend your money on.
So basically, that's every year.
It's cumulative between what you're describing as far as what our U.S. costs are, holistically speaking, and it's inevitable that you have to narrate all these different components based on the welfare state that we have here,
and the warfare
based
state,
on the warfare.
Mm-hmm. Welfare/warfare state. Welfare.
Social security, and all these things are pretty much percentage breakdowns on your credit card statement as a pie chart.
Social Security it's not going to work. There's not enough people working in the labor force today to make up for the baby boomers who are going to retire soon.
That was FDR, right?
That was FDR, and that was initially created as just a last resort of senior people, but it's become a thing where people are thinking Social Security is going to save them, and I think I get in trouble for saying this, but it sounds like a good idea. It's not. because now you're having people thinking, oh, I don't have to save. Government will give me a check. It's not happening.
No, that's very true.
And the money they're giving you, remember, is inflated dollars. It's not worth. You're getting $30,000. It's not the same $30,000 of 20 years ago.
That's why FDR, like, he's an interesting presidency to study because it's.
He realized the limits of his power.
Yeah, because if you look at it, it's like the country before FDR,
mm-hmm.
and then the country like after FDR.
He created our modern military state.
And then you could look at it like before FDR, then after FDR. Then you could look at it like before Reagan, after Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be like the two modern presidents. Like I look at FDR like as the first modern president.
Yeah, I'll say
and
that.
Then I look at Reagan as like the new modern.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny when you bring up presidents before FDR, no one knows who they are anymore. Like I bring up.
Well, yeah, because it's
cool. It's a lost world.
Well, because that's what I'm saying. Like before FDR, because FDR pretty much, regardless of what he did in terms of like the government programs that he did, which failed. If you look at it like this, like. FDR is that gold standard presidency where it's like everything before FDR, you all look at it and go, they didn't even do anything. Whereas like FDR, it's like everything in modern day.
It's the the president. It's the powerful president.
Yeah, it's the powerful president that everything that he did, people go, I saved the country. It's like, yeah, well.
Yeah, the problem is you also
we would have bounced back anyway.
We would, and you also realize that this is also the scary thing is that I think they pick these presidents for a purpose that we study in school because they want the idea of a powerful government.
Yeah.
And when you bring up someone like Rutherford Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, people have no idea Grover Cleveland. They have no idea who these guys are. And I think the more I've read about the presidents between Lincoln and Wilson that you know nothing about, there's a reason you don't hear about them because they're awesome. Calvin Coolidge. Yeah, even
Ian's favorite president.
Yeah, like
all he did was sleep.
Yeah, all he did was sleep. Like, but we lionize people like for the major things they did, but the office of the presidency is meant to be very, very limited. And it was actually Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson who radically changed that idea. Yeah. And then FDR and Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon just spent it into oblivion.
Republican and Democrat who did that.
Oh yeah, and you know what's funny? Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. The Republican Party hated him because he became this big administrative guy. They were like, that's not what our party stands for.
And then he tried to run for a third term
party, and then swayed the vote to Woodrow Wilson in 1912.
Bastard.
Yeah, it's no, Woodrow Wilson is
Well, he did the Bull Moose Party.
Bull Moose Party, and then we got Woodrow Wilson. We got the What do we got? We got the Federal Reserve Act, the income tax, abolished the 17th Amendment, World War One, like
World War One, a war that we really had no business.
We had no business in, and apparently that's something. So I just bought a book that I'm going to start reading called British Naval Intelligence from 1914 to 1918, and this guy's a naval historian from Britain, and he writes that some light reading, just something just to hang out with.
No big deal, some light reading.
And the book basically mentions that, the Lusitania, which was the ship that was shot. It was American passengers were on a British ship liner and German submarines sunk it, and that was part of the reason we got into war. Turns out Woodrow Wilson had weapons on there, and they were giving it to Britain, and the Germans had intercepted the code. They knew it was in there, so when they attacked it, they were actually rightfully fighting a war. So the U-boat blew up the thing, yes, killing civilians.
That's the movie U-571?
No, that's World War II.
That's World War II.
Because the U-boats were around in World War One.
Yeah.
World War One's a fascinating one.
Because it's the forgotten war. Nobody talks about it.
60 million people, I think, died.
Yeah, and then was it the Archduke got shot?
Yeah, you ever think about that? Imagine you're like a day laborer in Britain. War is declared. You got to sign up, son. Why? So there's this prince in Austria-Hungary who got shot by a Serbian nationalist.
And you're like, why?
I gotta serve. Yeah, serve your country. Serve the kid for God and country. What? Yeah. And you were seen as a loser if you didn't sign up.
Yeah, and then the war's over with, and then who gets blamed? Germany.
Yeah, Germany, who actually just sided with the wrong people.
And then you did.
And then you got World War II.
Yeah, oh,
so we want to, and history is just there's a reason why we're not taught it in a certain way.
The Cold War.
The Cold War. Everything sets up for the next.
The Cold War started immediately after World War II ended, or was it like?
You want to know why they teach it in such a strategic way too?
Why?
Because history
sounds better.
Yeah.
History is a subject that's always up for debate.
Mm-hmm.
In the simplest terms.
It's a science being studied.
And it's very easy to question on who is teaching it to you with more information nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So they teach it in a certain way as just the concept of trivializing like these students
big things,
to perceive like the generalistics of things.
Mm-hmm. They don't want you to know the details, basically.
Right.
And what were we talking about again? World War One.
World War One. Yeah, World War One. So was the Cold War started like immediately after World War II, or was it like a year?
There was a weird moment in there. So this is something so interesting that FDR died, and I think FDR's plan was always to get along with Stalin and give them aid because they had lost. I think Russia lost like 10 million soldiers. They sacrificed a lot against the Nazis. Like Eastern Europe was just in ruins, and Harry Truman came in and listened more to Winston Churchill, who hated Stalin, but they partnered with Stalin just to fight Hitler. So once Roosevelt's dead, that ear is gone, and Stalin left out in the cold. And Churchill pretty much told Truman he wants to take over the world, which is not totally wrong. Like I just don't think Joseph Stalin had the means in 1945 to do it. So it's interesting that the British, who were told basically gave up their empire. Greece, I believe, went into communist hands. There was a civil war, and Churchill bombed Greece, and I believe the CIA backed a coup and put the monarchy there, and Stalin never went in. And basically, I think Stalin was kind of doing an olive branch of like, I don't want to fight. So I wonder if people debate how the Cold War started. It's almost the West started it. We remember we created this national security state, building tanks, bombers, fighter jets, fighter planes. We didn't have jets for the end of the war. We built up all of these things, and we were so scared of going back to a depression that we kept the spending of what's called the military-industrial complex. So we kind of had to keep the war machine going because we were so scared of, like, once you decommission this, the Great Depression's coming back. And the only reason the Depression ended was because the Republicans got control of the Senate and they cut taxes. And then the spending went down, and that's when the Depression ended. World War II did not end the Depression. World War II just gave it a temporary boost. Once the war was over, though, you don't need planes and bombers anymore. Right back to square one.
I read something very interesting that FDR, after the war ended, he was going to step down. Like, he was going to, like, resign from the presidency.
Look, he looked horrible at the end.
Because his health was... He
had a 15-year president.
He had, like, heart failure, and he was, like... He had, like...
He looked horrible. You look at one of the last conferences with Churchill and Stalin, he looks horrible.
Yeah, his eyes are sunk.
He looks really skinny, and it looks really bad.
I mean, it was...
It's kind of ironic, as much as I disagree with them. I think that man, when he died, he probably could have prevented the Cold War.
Yeah.
Because Harry Truman was like a bumbling idiot.
He was the one that started the United Nations.
And his idea was basically have nations combine for peace, and there's some debate whether the UN works as intended. Or it was a nice idea.
It's funny that he put it in New York because that was his home.
Do you know who donated the land? Take a wild guess at which family donated the land.
Rockefeller.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds like
that's on Wikipedia.
That sounds like a good place to
end it for now.
Yeah, to end it for now. So
hope you guys enjoyed History and What Ifs.
I don't know if this is gonna go up or not, but
we'll see.
We'll see. We'll give it a little bit to mull on, but
this was brought to you by fake news.
You can find us on YouTube, Poodle Collective, Anchor, we're on Spotify. We're at nightsboard.com. You sign up there, you'll get an achievement, and you'll get some awesome content from us and more podcasts, as well as D&D stuff and other content that's going to go up there too. It's great.
Follow us on Instagram.
Just go on nightsboard.com.
Stay classy.
And we'll be there. So for me, Jerry, Ian, we'll say...
Sayonara.
Sayonara. Greetings.